Okay, we're gonna get started promptly because we have a power segment with our chef, Russell Weir. We're really excited, and it's gonna be talking about grilling. I'm Sophia Boris. I'm the events manager here for the college, and we're really happy that you could join us for our first ever summer market. Looking at like how the environment is right now and the previous events we've had in the summertime. Obviously, the summer carnival that we had for staff and students and the President's Barbecue, they didn't translate well online. So we thought, what can we do? We're kind of all stuck at home. What can we do to kind of fill our summer? And so that's how we came up with the concept of the summer market. And we're introducing you to local businesses around the city that we can tap into that will give us like tips and trades. And then of course, our own chef who's going to teach us all the great things to have on a barbecue. So we're really excited. So let's get started. A couple housekeeping things. If you have any questions, feel free. It's really laid back. So if throughout, there's like no question period. If you have a question, there's something's burning while Chef Weir is cooking, feel free to either raise your hand or write it in the chat, and I can read it out for you, or you can ask Chef yourself. And that's basically all the rules. So something that we want to just start with, that we start with all of our AC Connected events, is just getting the conversation started. So if everyone can open up the chat, and I'm going to give you a countdown of like 3, 2, 1. But while I do that, I want you to think of what is your favorite thing to barbecue this summer. So think about your most desirable food to have on the barbecue. And if you can all put it in the chat in 3, 2, 1, post. Steak. So chef, we have steaks, we have burgers, flank steaks, pineapple, short ribs. That's awesome. Veggies, asparagus. I just did asparagus the other day, it was delicious. Okay, cool, so that will get us started. So I'm gonna turn over to chef, over to you chef, enjoy. And I'll let you know in 5 minutes too.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, Sophia. And I'm glad to see the list of items that people like to barbecue, because I have probably a lot of those already here. And one thing I did notice that Sophia was saying was that if you have something burning, don't hesitate to raise your hand. And hopefully that's not something that's burning on this end, if you know what I'm talking about. So today we're going to barbecue or grill. We're using an outdoor barbecue, but it's mainly a grill basically. And we're going to do a full meal in your backyard. And we're going to do it in less than half an hour. So I have a salad, and the salad is avocados, nice ripe avocados, and a grilled pineapple. And then we have a main course, which is a bone-in rib steak with grilled potatoes and grilled corn on the cob. And then we have a dessert, and the dessert is grilled strawberry shortcake. So it sounds like a lot of grilled, but I'll explain to you as we go through as why it's not that bad or as grilled as it sounds. Any questions so far? No. Good. So what I'm going to do is I have the barbecue prepared here, and we have a kind of two-step barbecue. So we have hot on one side, and we have the heat sort of diminishing over to this side where it's kind of not cool, but it's certainly not searing hot. And I do that largely because of the steak. The steak we're using today is a massive big AAA rib steak, enough for 2 people. And if I was to leave that on the hot grill the whole entire time, it would likely just char itself on the outside. So we're using the two-step, which lends itself really well to making this whole meal. I'm going to do I'm going to start backwards, because I always like to start backwards. I do dessert first, don't you? So I'm going to grill the angel food cake, which we're going to use as a base for the strawberry shortcake. You can make them pretty easily. They're basically a meringue with flour, or you can buy them in the store. And sometimes they come in a bundt cake sort of shape, and sometimes they come in individual round ones. So I found an individual round one, which is really good because I like to do everything individually here. And they grill really nicely. The theme here is caramelization. The idea is not really to make the cake taste like a barbecue, but to bring the natural sugars out of this cake and caramelize them on the outside. And that does 2 things. That adds a different aspect to sweet, and it also gives us a textural difference on the outside of the cake, a bit of a crunch on this super light meringue-like cake. So I think that's kind of neat. And strawberries. We're using local strawberries today, and as such, they're kind of small. And so I've left them whole and put them on a skewer in order to get them grillable. Normally I would use a bigger strawberry and I would cut them in half. The reason I would do that is, once again, for caramelization. There's a lot of sugar in strawberry, even though they're tart at times. That grill effect, that high heat, will pull that sugar out to the surface and give it a really nice shine, as opposed to the charcoaly kind of grill flavor that you're expecting. It's really going to give it a different kind of sweetness and a beautiful shine to it. These are too small. They would fall between the rungs of this grill. So I've put them on a skewer and I've left them whole, but we'll get the same with that. And I'm doing this first. Anybody have any ideas why I'd be doing this first? I'm doing it first because I don't want to have the meat flavors and the fats and things that we're going to have from the meat on our strawberries. Plus, it doesn't really have to be served warm, so it's okay to be cooking it ahead of time and putting it off to the side. It's starting to caramelize a little bit there. We have a handicap here, and that is that this grill is equipped with stainless steel rungs. They're nice and easy to clean, and they look nice, and they put really nice marks on the product, but they don't hold heat very well. Typically, we like to have cast iron. Cast iron will hold the heat for a long time, and that helps when you're opening the lid often. So when you open the lid, you lose temperature. Cast iron will hold it, stainless steel won't. So unfortunately, you're going to get a nice close-up shot of a closed barbecue for a couple of seconds here. I think we're okay. There's something called carryover cooking, and what that refers to is that when we take it off the barbecue or the grill or out of the oven or wherever, it's not cold, it's still cooking. And so even though it's not on the direct heat, it's still cooking, and we're calling that carryover cooking. So oftentimes we'll cook things just a little bit rarer than we actually want in the end, knowing that it's going to continue to cook. The larger and more dense the product is, the longer that carryover is going to work. In this case, it's probably already stopped now, and which is fine because they're just budding with sweetness inside. It's ready to come out, but it's not coming out, which is a really good thing. You want that to come out when you bite it, if that makes any sense. If you're doing that, with that in mind, you want to be careful, and you want to make sure that when you do bite it, your mouth is closed. Otherwise, it could be embarrassing. So, the salad that we're going to do is grilled pineapple and avocado with red peppers, scallions, cilantro, red onion, and a little bit of lime. When you grill pineapple, it's nice to put a little bit of added flavor on there. So what we've got here is a kind of a rub. And this rub is made essentially with curry, cinnamon, cardamom, and some sugar. And although pineapple has its own sugar, this will help to caramelize on the grill. Oh, you can hear that now. I like the sound of that. You should smell it. It smells fantastic. A little bit of curry powder in there goes so nicely with the pineapple and the enzymes that are in the pineapple. It's going to come off looking very, very nice, and we'll attach that to our salad. If we were cooking more plant-based items on the barbecue today, for instance, tofu, if we were going to do a tofu dish alongside our meat dish, and we would if we had more time, then when you do tofu, you basically want to marinate that and get some flavor into it, because there's not much flavor in an organic piece of tofu. And it doesn't really contain any fat. So we want to make sure that it's got some oil on it so that you can get that sizzle on the grill. And that, if we did it, would go extremely well with this salad, this avocado, pineapple, and cilantro salad. I would make it no time though. So I'm not turning it yet, and there's a reason for that. As the heat is drawing those sugars out and beginning to caramelize them on the outside and make a crust. It's if it's sticking, it's not done yet. It's not ready to turn. So that's a tip. That's a tip that everybody should have when grilling. If it's not ready to turn, it'll stick. If it's ready, it'll turn easily. So we'll just let it cook a little bit longer, and we'll zoom in on the steak again. Because why not? Imagine a big piece of tofu here, all marinated, oiled. See, that was pretty easy. Right about now is when I would be dicing up the fresh avocado and the peppers and the cilantro, and I would be tossing it in a bowl with just a little bit of lime juice. You could add oil. You could add some olive oil or some avocado oil would be obviously very good choice when you're having avocado in the salad, but you don't necessarily need oil. The lemon juice is going to keep the avocados from going brown, and it's also going to add an acidity which will cut some of the sweetness involved in the sugar glazed pineapples. So they're about done. They're softening up a little bit, and when I put them on this plate and let them sit while we do other things, they'll start to glaze. You can see it's starting to come through now. Some of the natural sugars are starting to pop up to the top, and they'll continue in that carryover as we talked about. I'm just going to close the lid a little bit and try to keep some heat in. With our steak, we're going to do potatoes and we're going to do corn on the cob. And when choosing potatoes, I like a white potato, a white new potato, as opposed to a red or yellow flesh potatoes. I find that those ones have a texture that's a little bit too soft for grilling on the barbecue. And depending on the environment in our backyards on that Saturday afternoon and some of the influences that might be there or not, we might be a little pushy with our tongs and break some of those potatoes. So the white potatoes seem to work better. I have a bowl of them here. These are mini white potatoes, and they're not very big, but they're raw, and they cook very, very nicely on the barbecue or the grill, and they don't take all that much time. We just simply toss them in a little bit of olive oil and some seasoning. I've got chili flakes, I've got rock salt or coarse salt, black pepper, and I've got some dried herbs in there, thyme and rosemary. Now, when you toss these in the oil, the last thing you want to do is dump them onto the barbecue, right? We don't want to flare them. So I've actually tossed them and I've put them in another bowl, dump the excess oil out, so I'm not afraid to do this. That was about 1 drop of oil. If we had a quarter of a cup, we'd be in trouble. So I'm just going to give those a second to start cooking, and then I'm going to cook the steak. I'm putting those potatoes on because they will take probably about as long as the steak does. And it would be nice actually if I could get them off the barbecue first before I have to start worrying about the steak. So a lot of barbecues or grills will have a top layer on here. So when things are cooked, oftentimes we'll just put them up here over the cooler side of the barbecue so they don't continue to carry over in their cooking. But right now, I'll just push them up a little bit to the back. I'm going to put the steak on now. I think I'll close the lid and talk about the steak a bit. The question is, bone in or bone out? And oftentimes people will tell you that if you leave the bone in, it's the best thing to do because the flavors from the marrow are going to cook out of the marrow, out of the bone, and they're going to flavor the meat and make it more tasty. And that's just not so. The reason that that would happen or could happen maybe is if we cooked it at 140 or 150 degrees for hours and hours, as in braising or slow roasting. Not going to happen on the grill in 15 minutes. There are also people that say if you cook your steak rare, you really don't want the bone there anyways because it won't cook properly around the bone. And there's a bit of truth to that. But the reality is that the bone is made out of a porous, calcified material, and the interior of that bone is kind of like a honeycomb. And because of the way that is, it acts basically as an insulator to the meat. And so when we're cooking on there and we're flipping it up and down and back and forth, especially a really large piece like this, now just so you know, I'm expecting this 22-ounce steak to serve 2 people. It's insulating the meat in this area here from that high heat, and it's going to essentially come off the grill at about 5 to 10 degrees cooler than the meat over here. And that's an important factor because basically when we eat from the outside in. And a lot of times if we don't have that bone there, or if it is cooked completely evenly all the way across, maybe because of the carryover, by the time we get up to the end, it's going to be overcooked to what we had actually ordered. So in this case, our last bites are going to be medium rare or whatever it is we've chosen to cook it. The other good thing about a bone-in is that somebody can actually gnaw on the bone. You can give it to a dog or you can give it to your husband. You can keep it for yourself. It's pretty good. Lastly, what I want to talk about this steak is that we've done something called dry brine. And there's a lot of questions. Should I use a barbecue sauce? Should I use a rub? Should I use salt? Should I not use salt? Some people say never put salt on the steak until it's actually cooked. Some people say, oh yeah, you have to put the salt on the steak before it's cooked. And so we've all brined a turkey, and we know the difference basically between a brine turkey and a regular turkey. We're going to dry brine, or we've done that already. We've dry brined the steak. And essentially all we've done is we've taken a coarse salt, and we can take a variety of different salts. We can season the salt first, or smoke it if you've ever had smoked salt. We've got organic Celtic sea salt here, and it's coarse. And we've covered the entire steak with the sea salt, and we both sides, and we put it in put it on a rack like this, and put it in the fridge for 24 hours. And because we've used the organic sea salt, it's not falling or absorbing itself into the meat. It's still there, right? So we've taken that now, wiped it off very carefully. We've basically rinsed it. We don't want to say washed, but we've rinsed it, and we've patted it dry. Now, what the brining does, it manipulates the proteins inside, and basically allows them to absorb or reabsorb the natural moisture within the steak, and allow it to be used during the cooking process. And so what ends up happening is you have this beautiful steak. It just pops with juiciness and flavor because we've allowed that to happen. The other thing that happens with dry brining is that the outside of the steak will dry out a little bit, making it easy to have a quick crust on both sides as we're cooking. We form that crust, and then we push it over to the cooler side of the barbecue. It will cook nicely and retain its juices. And that's the whole idea for that. So now we're going to put it on the grill, and we're not going to put any more salt because it's been seasoned, but we are going to put a little crushed black pepper. And the comb I would be using the hands. On the hot side of the grill.
And just as the chef is cooking, feel free, we have about 6 more minutes of this segment, so ask your questions throughout. I'll prompt you to them, but I just want to make sure you get your summer questions answered.
As usual, I'm talking too much. So lastly, I'm going to serve corn. We're going to do grilled corn. And what we've done with the corn is we peel the husk back completely, and we remove the silk. Everybody knows what the silk is, all those little strands. Remove all those strands, and then we're going to actually brine the corn as well. We're going to stick that back in some water with a bit of salt. We don't do it for 24 hours. 10 minutes is fine. And then we're going to take it out. We're going to replace the husk, as I have tried to do here, and we'll put it on the grill. We can roll it around. It's not going to burn too much because it's been soaking in the water. Plus, it also has a lot of its own water and some sugar inside of it as well. And it won't take an awful long time. You can see it's starting already over here. One more thing. Remember, if it sticks, it's not ready to turn. And some people will say you should only turn it once. Cook it halfway and turn it, cook it the other half away. That's not really possible when you're cooking a steak that large. Turn it many times. Turn it back and forth, back and forth. It helps to make that crust form on all sides of that steak and allowing those juices to stay inside. When you're choosing a steak, you want to choose one with a lot of marbling. Marbling, now that I've covered it in pepper, but marbling is the little flakes of fat that you'll see go through there. Not like this one here. This is a connective tissue, some sinew. That'll stay there when it's cooked. But the little bits that run through the muscle itself we consider that we call that marbling. And the more marbling you have in there, the better it is, because that just turns into instant juice.
Chef, there's a quick question. Should the meat rest or not rest before serving?
Absolutely needs to rest. And again, depending on the size of the piece of meat, this is a 22 ounce, and I'm expecting to rest it about 10 to 12 minutes. It won't cool down to the point where it's inedible. It will be beautifully edible. The reason we rest it is for those, when it's cooking at a high heat or at any kind of heat, the molecules are moving the juices around and they're popping all over the place. So if we cut into that right off the barbecue, it's going to just squirt out onto our plate and it won't be there for us to enjoy eating. But if we let it rest, that stuff calms itself down and those juices redistribute themselves throughout the meat, and we can cut it and they'll stay inside the meat as opposed to leaking out onto the plate.
And then just one more question is, how do you know how well done a steak is? So I guess how you want to serve it.
Right here. So you figure out what the temperature of medium rare is, or rare. In our case, we want to cook this to about 120. Knowing that about 130 is where we really want it. But again, that carryover and that rest period is going to continue. So we're going to take it out at about 120. Lots of us can tell by touching it. And if you touch it, you can see my finger going in, and you can see it really slowly coming back out. That's very rare. In fact, that's raw. As it starts to cook, that bounces back a little bit more. And when it's well done, you can't get your finger in there. So it's kind of experience that tells you that it's bounced back enough. I think it's cooked enough. And since we don't have all that much time, I just wanted to bring you over here to show you what we would make it look like. For pineapple and avocado salad, we put the avocados on the line.
Chef, we can't hear you.
Sorry. So all the nice caramelization on the pineapple, alongside the avocados, cilantro, green onions, red peppers. Here's we've got that 22-ounce steak. Notice I've left the bone there for those who wish to gnaw on that. And notice how it's cooked all the way from one end to the other. And I believe that there's two reasons why we did that nicely. I think it's because we left the bone on and because we dry brined it. The corn is exceptional looking. Now the corn, when we're finished cooking, what we do is we put on what we call barbecue butter. And that is a mixture of garlic, again, with the rock salt, and some cayenne pepper and some paprika. And over here is the grilled strawberry shortcake. So, wow, look at that. We did a meal for two in 20 minutes in the backyard. We didn't even have to warm up the kitchen. Any questions?
Yeah, somebody wants you to come check out their house for them. Maybe?
Sure, yeah, sure. We can do it.
Where can they find this information? If they want the recipe, can I send it out to them after the fact?
Absolutely, yeah. We'll be sending that to you, and they could email you, Sophia, and you can send it to them.
Perfect. And do you have, what's your social so that they can follow you? Do you have any insight to tips and menu items?
Yeah, are we AC Eats, AC Food Service?
Okay, AC. I will post that. Perfect. Okay. Any last minute tips? We're about to sign off. I told you this was a power segment just to kind of get us in the mood for some barbecuing. Any last minute tips that you want to leave everybody with?
We talked quickly about rubs. We didn't really touch on sauces. Sauces are something that we wouldn't put on a steak like this, or at least I wouldn't, but we might want to use them on ribs. Use them towards the end of the cooking process so that they don't burn on the grill. That's a tip. And secondly, if you're planning to marinate the cook, don't over marinate them. It's important.
Awesome. Okay, well, we miss seeing you. And thanks again. I posted in the link other videos that Chef Weir has provided in terms of different options to cook in the kitchen. And yeah, the segment 2 is starting shortly. So if you're signed up for another market event, we'll see you shortly. And for everybody else, thanks again for joining. And thanks again, Chef and your team.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye, everyone.